Hello everyone, thank you for coming. I'm Mayor Glotz, and I want to thank our clerk Nancy O'Connor in the back that's here. And as always, Lisa Valley that sets everything up for us, so big thank you to Lisa Valley. I want to thank Joe Kral, the Frankfort Assessor, and Amanda's assistant for coming today to speak to you guys to see if they can help you in lowering your taxes. We had roughly 3,000 people that came for the Cook County one for their appeal a couple weeks ago. So it's crazy what's going on with the taxes. Luckily, from the village portion, depending on where you live, Rich Township is only just over 9% of your tax bill from the village. Redmond Township is just over 11. Orland Township is 13.5, I believe. And then Will County side, I think, is right around the 13% as well.
Township was 1%. That's not your county.
So we knew this was coming with the big tax increase, and I want to thank our board staff working hard. We tightened the belts instead of increasing the levy. We're one of the only governments that did a 0% levy increase. Unfortunately, we can't control what the schools did in Lincoln Way. But so hopefully Joe can help you with lowering your taxes, and he can explain it more in depth since this is what they do for a living. But we want to wish you all luck. Thank you for coming, and hopefully Joe can assist you with your taxes in Will County. So thank you, Joe.
Awesome. All right, thank you, man. I'm going to try to do this without a microphone. Can you guys hear me?
Can't.
Because otherwise, I think it's booming and it's self-conscious.
He can't hear you on the camera. Sorry.
Can you hear me on the camera now? All right, okay. I'll hold it down here. Public speaking is not my forte. I'll do my best. I love the subject matter, and we'll talk about it. And I'm going to say something and ask a question that I ask whenever I talk. Who here thinks their property tax bill is too high? Some of you don't? No? Okay. How many here think property tax bills in general are too high? Yeah. We're going to talk about property tax bills, and we're going to talk about your assessment and your relation to your assessment. That's me. That's me back when I was first elected, like darker hair and so forth. We have a small crowd here. I think that the Socratic method, if you have a question at all, ever, please raise your hand, because if you have that question, probably somebody else does, and I've spoken too quickly or I haven't explained something, and it's best that we explain it. Your name?
Dennis.
Dennis, what are property taxes used for?
Schools, library, government, fire.
Fire, absolutely. This is what makes up your property tax bill. When you look at your property tax bill on the left-hand side are taxing bodies. Each one of those is levying against you, saying, we are providing you a service, and in regards to the return for that service, you're going to pay X amount of dollars. Next slide. What determines your property tax bill? It's the public services, and your portion is determined by your assessment. And that's where we have to explain what an assessment is, and when an assessment goes up, it doesn't mean your tax bill goes up. Next slide. The assessment is the property value that we put on, and it's roughly, next slide, 33% of your market value. What is market value? What you would sell your property for in an arm's length transaction. So when you look at your neighbors, you see what their houses are selling for, you look at what my assessment is. It's on a 3-year average, so it's generally behind whatever the number is. Like right now, if you look at what your assessment is and you look at what your neighbors are selling for, generally it's a lot, my assessment is lower than what your assessment is. Next one. It is my job to provide assessment equity, meaning that if you're in a 3-step ranch and your neighbor's in a 3-step ranch and you got relatively the same square footage, your assessment should be right around the same level. And that is going to be key as far as filing an appeal. It's going to be hard to find sales. I mean, when you're going to file an appeal, you can file an appeal based upon three things. A recent sale. I just bought my property and you're assessing it higher than I had it. It's an automatic. Bring those sale documents in and I'll drop it. Second one is sales around your neighborhood are less than what I have you assessed for. And you can look, go to Redfin, Zillow, pull up sales in your neighborhood. You'll be surprised to find that that's not the case. And if the Fed drops the rates, again, I can only imagine how houses are going to inflate, but that's neither here nor there. But assessment equity is being able to define your house in relation to your neighbors. And that's a simple calculation of looking at the value we've placed on your building and dividing it by the square footage to get a price per square foot. Then you can compare yourself to your next door neighbors. All of my assessments are based on a 3-year moving average. The state of Illinois looks at every sale that occurs within Tinley Park, Will County, and they say, what do you have it assessed at? And what is the valuation? And as it goes forward, the overall market changes those numbers. Last year it went up 10%. This year it's 9. 12. Doesn't affect your tax bill at all. I know you're saying, well, how does that make sense, Joe? If my assessment goes up, doesn't my tax bill go up? No, because the way they calculate it, this is a shared percentage of the levy that the levy from, say, the Park District. Your assessment is a percentage of what that levy. And if everybody's assessment goes up or everybody's assessment goes down, it doesn't change it. And this is go to the next 10 houses? Yes. All right. Imagine a township with just 10 houses. Small. We're going to make it simple. We're going to make it easy to understand. Next slide. Yeah. Let's suppose they only have one taxing body, and that taxing body is a Park District. Now, next slide. You're the assessor, and you said, you know what, every house is worth $100. All right? Next slide. And careful consideration by the Park District, they need $100 a year to operate. Now, the way they calculate the taxes, next slide, you're going to take the total amount of levy divided by the total amount assessed value of the community. 10 houses at $100 is $1,000, divided by the total amount of levy, 100, and that equals the tax rate, which is 10%. Now, next slide. What I just said. Next slide. Yeah. All right. Since each house is valued at 100, if we apply a tax rate of 10%, each house pays $10, and that satisfies said levy. Now, next slide. What if the assessment goes down? Now, you're sitting there saying, the value of my house has dropped. And that happened. 2007, 8, 9, 10, and 11, values dropped. Did anybody notice their tax bills going down? No, not a dime. Why? Because now we have 10 houses at $50 a piece, or $500. Let's go to the equation. Divide it out, tax rate needed, or it now jumps to 20%. That's the tax rate. So when you look at your tax rates on your tax bill, and you see where it jumps, that's actually the total assessed value of your township, all the commercial, industrial, and residential, in one big number, compared to what the levy is, how much the taxing bodies want. And the true reason why your tax bill has increased as much as it has over the last 2 years, 3 years actually, is a law called PTEL, and what allows taxing bodies to raise their levies. Next slide. Okay, yeah, so 20% more, 20 times 50 is 10, 10 houses covers the $100. Unfortunately, that levy never stays the same. Next one. Wasn't $10 when the house was valued at 100? Yes, but the fact that you dropped your, same thing when it raises. If everybody goes up or everybody goes down, all that affects is the tax rate that's applied to it. Now, how does assessment change your tax bill? If I change just you, and nobody else. And when I change you, that doesn't mean that the government gets a dime less. It just means that everybody else makes up for it in their tax bills. That's why when everybody was here, the thousands from Cook County, and they're all clamoring to do appeals, that's just going to shift the burden out if they are actually giving these appeals, because I'm not really sure what they were using for their criteria. But, all right, next slide. The assessed value of a house is only a way of considering its relative value and hence the owner's fair share of the tax burden. Home values change from year to year, but the relative valuation is the same and has no bearing on your tax bill if the levy remains the same. Do we have any questions on that? No? Next. Tax bill breakdown. It's my tax bill. You'll notice that my tax bill jumped from 9.7 to 10.6 in 1 year. Now it's in Mokina, and that's in 159, which, understand the big bulk of anybody's tax bill is going to come to your grade school, your high school, generally fire department, but your fire department is in your village. And I have to commend you. The fact that you didn't raise your levy, that is an aberration in the way that most taxing bodies work. If you go down this list, I mean, 5% Lincoln Way, the debt obligation on North, that closed school that's on there that we owe $250 million on, that pushed their budget up, I think, $8 million this year. Jumped $8 million. And where does that money come from? That comes from our tax bills that's spread out amongst all of us. And that's where the raise came. And I think that's the last slide here. Okay. This is a breakdown of where the money goes. High school, school, this is the fire district, this is Will County, Park District. I mean, people come in all the time and they're like, well, it's not the schools. That's all schools. And it's not this, it's not the fire department. Well, that's 80%. You're not going to talk about any of that as far, we all raised our hands. Property taxes are too high. Schools and fire make up 80%. In our township, we have fantastic schools. And your community is by far the most generous of all communities. How many have lived here more than 20 years? Anybody? 7. 7 is the number of referendums you have passed for your grade school district. Every time they've asked for money, you've said yes. And they've always advertised it as a small amount. But the problem is that over time, that small amount gets the PTEL number applied to it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Next slide. This is the school budgets of, we have good schools. It's what makes people come to our community. But at some point you have to look at, it's a service, and what are they providing, and what are they teaching, and whole other things. But this is what was paid in blue is in 2022 and 2023. Next slide. This is the increase to the budget levy for all of the schools in Frankfort Township. So 8 million, almost 9 million from Lincoln Way, and 161 was up $2,367,000. That money has to come from somewhere. And the school boards that set these levies, that decide what they're going to be, and the way the budgeting process works is that we submit our numbers in June. There's the appeal season that's going on now, and the school systems all decide their levies in November and December. And what are we doing in November and December? We're thinking about Thanksgiving and Christmas, and nobody attends meetings or talks to people about this, and this is what happens. And believe me, the Lincoln Way, any of you guys worked when they closed Lincoln Way North? I was part of the group that, tried to save it and all that. The reality is that we only needed one high school, and built 2, And now it sits closed, and just because it sits closed, it doesn't mean we don't owe the $250 million on it that we do. We still have to pay on it. And guess what? We're still paying on it. Thanks. Total spending for students.
Joe?
Yes.
She had a question.
Yes.
So when they close the two schools,
Oh, it's 161?
the elementary school?
Yes.
How does that affect us?
Nothing. It doesn't change anything.
Are we still at-
Well, that's not
Are you
true.
gonna get there?
We'll talk about that. We will.
Okay.
The fact that you passed 7 referendums, you are spending $25,000 per student. That is what 161 expends on each student. That is fully 5,000. Go to the next slide. Oh, that's the total enrollment. Go down. Do I have that? Oh, that's 157C, 20,000 students. Okina, 20,000 students. What is the difference? Why is it 25 in 161 and 20 in Frankfort and 20 in Okina, and the state average is being 20? 7. 7 is the referendums that were passed over those years. And it's continually going to get a larger difference. I mean, you are going to continue to keep getting a larger gap between those, because once those numbers and get percentages applied to them at a set amount, it's going to continue to get more and more. That's why when I've spoken here before, and people ask me what's the #1 thing about property taxes, it's you only vote for a referendum if you absolutely need what you're going to get. And if you don't, then vote no, because that becomes the problem. And it also happens that, back 25 years ago when you wanted to build a school, you would do a referendum for $6 million. And once that $6 million was paid back, the referendum falls off. But they got smart. They don't do that anymore. They just do an increase to the tax rate, a small percentage. And they actually argue that, how many of you guys remember Will County Mental Health? If you go back to my tax bill. My tax bill. Was it last November? There on our ballot were 2 initiatives: Will County Mental Health and Amendment 1. And I knocked on every door in Tinley Park. Every one of them said, "Listen, this is a tax increase. And you're against mental health." No. I'm against giving the government money for things that, truthfully, I don't know. I think that the tax increase is going to cause more mental health issues than the government is actually going to solve. And if you look, now, it's actually a great thing for you guys to watch. It's a little baby taxing body. Right now, it's small. It's $47.39. And next year it'll be $54. And 10 years from now it'll be $400. And that is, unfortunately, the first taxing body that we've actually put in place that we do not elect the people on it that spend the money. It's just appointed people from Will County. And what specifically are they going to do with that mental health money? I don't know. It's whatever they decide they consider mental health. Maybe, trips to the Bahamas or something. I don't know. That's the problem.
Is that the general public? Is that mental health only for the public?
It's a board. They've appointed a board to spend the money. They didn't really know what they were going to do with it, so they appointed a board, and we voted for it. And I knocked on everybody's door. As a group, we knocked on every door in our entire township, handed out literature. Nobody wants to talk about it. Close the door. We don't want to talk about it. And this is a tax increase. And in fact, one of the CAMA system, computer-aided mass appraisal system that we use, we happen to be going through, and whenever I do something through my office, I like to look and see, make sure that we're not overpaying. So we went and looked at one of our surrounding communities from DuPage, who has the same CAMA system, and there's a computer upgrade on there for our CAMA system, and at the end of it, it says mental health. So they were using that money into Page to upgrade a computer program in an assessor's office from the mental health budget. And I don't know how that works with mental health, but I mean, that's the thing, is that just because it says mental health, that doesn't mean that it's going to mental health. I mean, it could be Save the Puppies or whatever they're going to name it, and we'll vote for it. Let's talk about appeals.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes?
With, when the Lockport High School came over to start using Tinley North,
Yeah.
in theory, that would have been pooling money because they were paying $250,000 a month.
20,000 of those, none of that money went to pay down debt obligation.
So where did that money go that in theory should have
What a
been
great
changed
question.
to rate?
What an absolutely great question. And why isn't that money being put to pay down the debt that we all owe on that? That's a great question.
Where do we get those answers on? Is that in theory?
That would be the school board, that would be the Lincoln Way School Board. And that's a whole question that you know, you have to look at the people that you're putting onto boards and people that are dictating where this money goes. Because at the end of the day, these people are going to go in November and December and decide what they're going to do with last year's budget. And government budgets operate on the same principle that your IRA operates on. The reason an IRA is a very fundamental way to save money is called compound interest, meaning that when you gain interest on something, the next year you gain interest on the interest, and it goes forward. That is exactly the way a governmental budget works. So 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, you know, your school systems looked at their budget, the largest budget, park districts, and said, oh, well, we can raise it, and let's go to, can we go to P-Town? In 1991, we had a state legislature that was a lot smarter than we do now, a lot more intuitive to what's going on. And if you guys remember 1991, we had just finished major roads, and we gave birth to what's called the collar counties. Now, Cook County, as nobody here's from Cook County, right? We're all Will? Yes. It's a magical place that things happen, shouldn't happen anywhere else, and whatever. They actually assess differently than the rest of the state, and they put the onus of property taxes on people that can't vote, which is commercial and industrial. And what did that do? That pushed major commercial and industrial to the collar counties. Now, back through the late 80s, you had this situation where taxing bodies were able to raise whatever levy they wanted. And it was horrible. It was the wild, wild west. They wanted a school, they raised the tax bills were going up 15% in a year. And our legislature, which was a lot more in tune to what was going on, enacted the law called PTAL, Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. I know it's a lot. You can Google it. It's actually out there. And this is the numbers from PTAL. So you go back to 2000. Actually, scroll up a little bit. All right. So it starts out. You know, it generally stays around 2.9. It jumped to 3.6. And here you go to 4.1 in 2007. And that's inflation. What is the CPI? The CPI is a governmental number. The government looks at a loaf of bread, a gallon of gas, all of these things, and decides what the market has done over the last year. And this law, PTEL, tells all of those taxing bodies that they can raise their levy either the CPI or 5%, which is ever lower, which is, I think, a pretty good rule to have. And when you look, the numbers pretty much stay 1.5, and you can actually go look at your tax bills, and that's generally what your tax bills were going up each book, except for referendums like Lincoln Way. Scroll down. Oh, that's it. Okay, yeah. So, till we get to 2021, 7%, which meant that every taxing body, if they could raise their levy 5%. Did every taxing body do that? No. But our major ones did. Schools did. I've actually got some video clips from school board meetings where they were positively giddy. Hey, you know, I've never been able to raise our levy 5%. And I'm thinking to myself, man, you know, the constituency is not going to be happy about this. And the next year, that larger budget they've ever had, the largest budget increased by 5%, increased by 5% again. And now, this is a federal election year, so they try not to hide inflation, so they remove coffee and gas from the CPI because more people are driving electric cars and some people drink tea. I'm not sure, but so they dropped it to 3.4. But here's the bad news, and this is what I'm trying to get across to people. Yes, guess what? Levies can only go up by 3.4% next year. But guess what? 5% 2 years ago, 5% again. 3.4 is pretty much close to the 5% on that larger budget as you keep increasing this. And that is why it is imperative that you pay attention to, one, who you're electing to school boards and fire protection boards and this. And that's why I'm absolutely, the mayor not taking a levy increase. And also, by the way, all those people in Cook County that are complaining about their taxes going up, it's because Cook County is so far behind that you guys were making up their portion of the tax bill. Them going up in value is talking about satisfying the levy for two of your institutions, your library and your village. That should see a market decrease because their tax bills are going up. Nobody in the village is getting more money on that, but their end is going to get satisfied because by the Cook County side, which for years has absolutely not been where it needed to be. And that is what, and you can see it. Just with tax anticipation, I'm sure you guys, you see some yo-yoing when you look at the village of Tinley Park on your tax bill from year to year, like it'll be a small rate and then a big rate. That has to do with Cook County, doing Cook County things and being behind. And at one point, I think they made seniors reapply for their senior exemption because in Cook County, seniors can get younger than 65, I guess. Once at some point. So let's talk. That is how our property taxes work. Right? You're concerned about appeal. You want to appeal your assessment. Do the soft appeal. Okay. Well, here, first off, yes. You want to do this? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to let Amanda talk about the website and where to go to file it.
Okay, as you can see here, where I'm right at here, the 2024 board review, filing a complaint. You're going to click on this little link here, and that's going to take you to their portal. So you're going to be filing the appeal through the Will County Board of Review. So when you scroll all the way down to the bottom, that's where you're going to find the login, because then you're going to have, if you don't have an account, you're going to have to create an account, get a password, because that's how they're going to correspond with you. They are going to mail stuff out again this year, but they're going to do most of it to the portal. They're forcing everybody much to go online, because you don't want to take the chance that you mail it in and they don't get it, and then your appeal doesn't get filed at all. So I would suggest doing it online. I know sometimes it's hard to navigate. You can always call our office and we can help walk you through their portal. They're right here where you go to downloads, go to their dashboard too. The dashboard will literally bring you to the downloads here is where you can get all your information. So you would be filing the 2024 residential appeal form packet. You're going to click on that, and that's going to give you the appeal. So it's 35, 40 pages, but read through the directions because they've changed stuff year to year. They're updating stuff, and you want to make sure that you follow their rules completely, or they'll kick your appeal out, and you don't want that.
But remember that you're going to appeal based on one of three things. I just bought my property, and you have it assessed for more. Sales in my neighborhood, and you can look on Redfin or Zillow and go to sales and look at the last 3 years and look at what those sales are and see where they are in relation to what your house is valued at for the same kind of house. And you're going to stick to the same kind of house. If you're in a ranch and you're going to look for ranch sales, you're in a two-story, you're going to look for two stories. If you're in a mixed. Third one is assessment equity, and that's going to require a little bit of math. It's going to look at you looking at what their assessed value in the building and dividing by this. Here is what you're going to put, what it is and what you think it is. And then you have to mark recent sale, comparable sales, assessment equity, or recent construction if you just.
And make sure you fill out your claim. They do get a lot of appeals that they forward to us, and there's no claim.
Right.
So we have no idea what you're asking for, so you're gonna put your current 2024 assessed value in there at the beginning where it says by the assessor. That's what your current assessment is for 2024. And then your claim is gonna be what you think your house is worth.
All assessments are broken down into three: land, improvement, or building, and the total.
This is farm land, farm building, which only if you have a farm.
Does anybody have a farm in here? No? Okay.
Would you say that the assessment equity is the value that your home is divided by the square footage?
It's the value on the building,
The building,
so the improvement
divided by.
divided by the square footage. And it'll give you a price per square foot, so you can compare apples to apples. If you find other people in your neighborhood,
And that square footage of the building itself, not of the property.
not at the property, the building, not the total, you're gonna use the building to get a price per square foot. Land, because if somebody has a bigger piece of property, or generally, percent land, they're pretty almost the same. But
So right here, down at the bottom where it says improvement assessment per square foot, that's where you're gonna take your building divided by the square footage.
Would you highly recommend an appeals lawyer? Your opinion?
in my opinion, the best way to do any of this is a soft appeal, which is not now, but between February and, May. And what I do is I sit down with you in my office with 2 monitors, and we pull up every single house in your neighborhood, and we have computers that do all of the data, and we all come up with an understanding, and before I turn my numbers in, we've already agreed on something. Now, if you're going to get a lawyer, find a lawyer that is going to work on what he's going to win you, or whatever he's going to bet. Lawyers that ask for money up front on this generally
You're talking percentage.
yeah, you want a percentage of what it is, because it doesn't, a lot of times,
They
there's
don't
not
turn
a case.
anything in,
Or they don't
or
turn
it's
anything
really
in,
poor
especially-
work.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean,
What's the success rate of the appeals service?
by who? Anybody?
People, general.
If there's any reason for bringing them down, I generally will stipulate out, look at it, and figure out a reason, and not even let it get through the appeals process, because I'll get your case before it comes to me. If they actually go to the board, 3%. I mean, I'm not, my goal here, there's no benefit to me to make you not be assessed properly. There's no benefit, I don't make the government any more money to make your assessment high. My job is to make it fair. And there's not a person that's worked harder within 50 miles of here talking about property taxes and explaining how they are than me, and trying to make it fair for you. And I will absolutely, if there's a reason, you come into my office, there's people like, I filed it, can you make it more fair? No, I can make it fair. And past that, anytime I make you lower, all that's doing is pushing value on him. And I don't want it to be unfair to him either. Maybe this guy, but no. That's what it comes down to is I want my numbers to be defendable in that I can show sales, show numbers that go along with it, and make sure that the people around them are being assessed fairly. There's always a time of coming in and say, well, this guy's paying less. Well, we live in the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois does a lot of things that I don't agree with. One of them is exemptions. If you're a senior, you get a senior exemption. If you're a senior freeze, you get a senior freeze exemption. If you're a military veteran and you're 80% disabled, you don't pay property taxes. When you start doing exemptions, understand that's a political way for somebody to look like he's doing something to help somebody out on property taxes, when in reality, all of us are making up for it in our property tax bill. So when Rauner stood up there, believe me, I walked for Rauner, and I was disappointed, I'll believe, on this. Listen, I want to help veterans out as much as possible. I do. I love veterans. I'm my father, so forth. But when you make the terminology that if you live in a $750,000 house or less, you don't have to pay a property tax bill if you're 80% disabled, and not have any actual other than a doctor just telling you that you're 80% disabled. People can get that from doctors, and then they don't pay property tax bill. And do we have the numbers? Is there? I think it's in the secondary sheet. Go back to the one petition. Sorry. Yeah.
What's the fee for the appeal?
Nothing. On a dime. Do it for free. Yes.
Joe, just as far as the question about making more beneficial to hire an attorney, I'm always against hiring attorneys for this because they take a third, they take a half. Can't they, because you are, like you said, you probably work with the residents in your district more than anyone I've ever
Yes.
seen. Couldn't they just as easily set up an appointment with you and you guys go through them together and sit, so if they,
Right. That's
if
the
their taxes
software.
are gonna
The
be.
only trouble is that I can't adjust anything.
Right now.
I have no ability to make one change unless you file an appeal now for the tax bill you get next year. If you don't, and if you decide to step off and you say, like, listen, I'm going to deal with it next year and come in February, absolutely. The best way is to sit down with me, have the conversation, talk about assessments, talk about where you are in relation to your neighbors. I have a nice big monitors that I set up so that I can show everybody where exactly they're at, where their neighbors are at, and how assessments work in their neighborhood. And that, I've met with 2,600 people in this type of forum and explained to the same situation, but we still pass Will County Mental Health.
I just hate to see if you could find $800 reduction, 400 of it is going to probably an attorney that assisted in some shape or form of
Right.
writing that tax code instead of doing it with you, and that other 400 just goes in their pocket.
Well, yeah, I agree, especially if it's, most of the time, if you talk to appeal attorneys, they will work like crazy in Cook County, because Cook County operates in the magical, as I've said. Most attorneys out here in Will County tend to shy away because most of the assessors out here do a job where you're pretty commensurate. And it's not hard. Listen, if you want to try it yourself, I would say try it yourself first to file the appeal. Have questions, call me on it, and we can talk about it. Now this is exemptions. And if you'll look at when it was interacted, right now the veterans exemption is actually almost as much as the senior homestead, which, I mean, that's insane. It's when all that takes place, understand the government doesn't make a dime less. It means that we, what is it now, close to 330 million. And it's assessed value that's being removed from the tax base that you make up for in your tax base. Yes?
Soft appeal is that you can't do that right now. Soft
No.
appeal is,
So the way the assessment schedule works is this, is that end of December, I'm gonna get called down to the county and they're gonna, used to give me a book, but now it's a digital file. And they say, this is all of the assessments for your township, every parcel. And you have 5.5 months to set those for the end of the year. So as of the first of the year, I have to value them on that 3-year thing, and I will put those numbers in. So when I first got elected, I realized a lot of people were filling out appeals incorrectly. They didn't understand the nomenclature or the names. And I had this idea. I said, you know what? Why not invite the constituent in on the process? And why don't you sit down and we'll talk about it? I called the soft appeal. I sent out cards to every single person. It cost an arm and a leg back then. I don't even know what it would cost to send out cards today. And it was so novel that the state of Illinois gave me an award, the Mighty Message Award. And I'm like, it's just common sense. I don't understand why every assessor doesn't do it. But guess what? Every assessor in Will County does this now. And they should, because it's a time to sit down and talk about what assessments are and explain to you how taxes are raised and the whole cycle, and make sure that when you look at your tax bill, and like I say, my tax bill went up $1,000 too. It's When I first gave this, I gave a warning, and I said, you know, if it continues on this way, property taxes are gonna double in the next 14 years.
So here we are.
And guess what, 14 years later, and it's almost, actually we're close to doubling.
Now, you
Yeah.
know, and you own your home, which we do.
Yeah, oh yeah,
How can you pay? You can't afford your taxes.
you can't. I understand. I'm right there with you. I literally knock on doors to talk about this tax issue. Show my budget, it's fine. I took office in 2010, and this was my budget, $435,000. It's now 2024. My last budget, 302. In 14 years, I've dropped my budget 100,000 plus. I operate from 10 employees to 5 employees. I computerized most of the stuff that goes on. Now, admittedly, this last budget was a lot lower because the last payment for the township building is done, which we built a building without a referendum, without asking anybody for more money, and now we have a beautiful township building that everybody can utilize, which I think is the way government is meant to be run. And it's a service. So we provide you a service. I'm there to talk to the residents. I'm there to, help explain taxes, and should do it for the least amount of value as possible. Yes?
How far can you go back? Like, let's say we might, hypothetically met with you in whatever, February or whatever.
Not anywhere. You can't go back at all.
You
You
can't
can only go
back at all.
forward. In fact, so the problem with any of this is that money is spent and budgeted by each of those taxing bodies. So if, are you going to go back and tell a teacher that you need to pull money back out of the account from what they're paying? Or
Yes.
a school? Well, yeah, I mean,
Yes.
well, listen, 161, I attended that first meeting when they were talking about closing the schools. And it was deja vu. It was literally the same meeting from when they closed North. The questions they were putting up there, they're saying, oh, this is a decision we haven't made yet. And I walked outside and I was like, no, they've already made the decision. It's already happened. And so there's really not a chance. And I'm in 159, so I don't really have any kids in the school to fight about it. But, it's just, I have friends in Armory Hills. I know what that meant, that they're closing that school. And the fact that your school district is $5,000 more ahead than any other school district. I mean, Chicago's more, they're 28, and they have least, they have schools with nobody in grade level. Yes, I'm sorry.
So being the person in the room with the kid,
Yeah.
it's not 25K that is spent on the kid, I can tell you that.
No. They're
No,
collecting 25,000, whether they're spending it or not.
So my question is, if so much of this comes down to the school board, what is the action to make school boards accountable for where the missing funds are?
Where the missing funds are?
Yes, like where the money goes, when we say that.
I don't know, what happened to the money from that,
Wiley, and again, like if
Wiley,
Glotz is renting.
Wiley, yeah, there was no accountability, he got away.
Correct, okay, that mentioned. So what is it that is holding the school boards accountable for these levies of 5% in 2021 and 2022? What do we do as a community to hold the school boards?
Run for school board. Run for school board. If I can find candidates that are fiscally responsible to run for these boards. Now, the problem is this, is that you can't go, you have to have common sense. There has to be an understanding that some levy increase is going to be needed if costs go up. But the idea that your taxing body, whether it be a school or a park district or any of these, always needs the exact amount that the PTEL number was, is crazy. The fact that you're not doing your job as a governing body to look at what you're getting for your investment. And I mean, you can look at some taxing bodies when the budget year's up and you can see all the salesmen out in front and all the stuff they buy, or what happened to the money that Lockport was paying for that school? Now, I did talk to the new Capabelli Ruff, who's the regional education person. And the people in Lockport are rather upset they didn't pass that referendum. And they're looking to secede and put a referendum on their ballot so that they get moved into the Lincoln Way School District, which would be great. Because if we can pull enough students from Homer Glen into Lockport or into Central, that would force them to reopen North. And we built North. We owe $250 million on it. It makes me more upset that it sits closed than anything else. The fact that I get reports that it's overcrowded in East, and we're dealing with overcrowding again, and we sit here with a closed school that was state of the art. The Illinois Philharmonic Orchestra could not find a venue that rivaled the theater at North. They operated out of the theater at North. Couldn't find any commercial venue around here to play at. We built a Taj Mahal that now sits closed. Yes. Questions?
$1 million a year to keep it shuttered.
Oh yeah, well, it's absolutely, it's ludicrous, and it makes no sense. But I can tell you, back in the day, the vote no signs, I paid for those out of my pocket, at least some of them. But I mean, and we had meetings with Wiley, and we talked about it, and we said, listen, we need one big school, not two small schools. And he said, no, we need to have 2 school newspapers and 2 football teams and 2 this, and it failed. That referendum failed in Mokina, it failed in New Lenox, it failed in Frankfort, and it passed in Manhattan, and it passed here. The only 2 places that it passed, and it passed at such an overwhelming result that it negated all of Mokina, Frankfurt, and New Lenox.
You should see what it looks like inside now. We've been in it. It's so dilapidated.
Is it really?
Oh my gosh. The roofs are leaking. There's water everywhere.
I'm not taking care of it.
And we still owe $250 million. I mean, you know, it's just, it's that insanity. And I don't know, anybody want to run for Lincoln Way School Board? I can't. But I mean, if we could find people to run for this, but once again, it needs to be a common sense. I will, in my opinion, the number one issue is making sure we educate our children to grade point level. Math, English, you know, I mean, those are numbers that are, that we need to create successive generations. I mean, nobody can figure out what kids are going to need 15 years from now in this kind of world, what they're going to need. But I can tell you math and being able to communicate are going to be 2 things that children will need. Yes?
I want to go back to closing off Frankfort Square. And
Yeah.
Hills. Okay, so before they close, they were getting some kind of tax money. Whatever.
They have a budget, so 161 is a budget.
So
Where's that
is
money
that
going?
still part of this budget? or
Their
that all
budget,
off since
the amount of buildings they have has no play into what their budget is. There is a bond issue, and I think at the school board meeting 2 nights ago, they actually did something good, and they took a larger portion of the proceeds of the sale from Arbor Hills to pay down their debt at a higher rate than they needed to, which I commend them for. I mean, that's the debt that schools take on, the debt taxing bodies take on, is one of the major problems. I mean, we can talk about debt in Illinois and the pension debt and all of that, which is even worse, but a lot of times taxing bodies take on unbelievable amounts of debt that you're just paying down that debt obligation, which is taking operating funds away. And if they can do that, take the proceeds of that sale and take some of that debt down, hopefully that takes the number that they're applying to you and take less. But that's a job for the school board and somebody who is fiscally
So it's
thinking
like,
about
it's
it.
the whole school district tax budget, it's not.
It's not
It's
individual
not-
schools, no.
okay, all
In
right.
fact, they get one amount, this is what the amount is, and
Because
they
I was
have the
thinking
ability
that
to
since
increase.
those 2 schools aren't around, that whatever was going to them should be distributed to the others.
Would be great, but that's not gonna happen. I mean,
They kept the majority of the staff. They kept the majority of the staff, so you're not saving money on salaries. They
Oh, yeah.
moved those salaries into open schools.
that was the number one
The only thing
concern.
you're saving money on is running of the building, which they still have to keep it functional so it doesn't turn into norm. So we're not
Right.
gonna save a dime.
Well, they sold one school, the other school, I think, is addition for the Park District, or Frankfort Square Park District. Is that what the plan was? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think personally the plan was to give the school to Chicago Autism, but I don't know why
Well, it
they,
went to the Islam.
well, it did, but actually that's probably even better.
They paid more money.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but they went to a sealed bid, which there were other ways they could have done it if they were going to give it to Chicago Autism, but whatever reason they did, they went to a sealed bid. Somebody came in, bid more. I mean, if you look at Chicago Autism School, they're in actually an old 161 building too that's falling apart. I don't know how much maintenance they do on the building. I guarantee you the Islam school is going to probably throw money into it, make it look good, probably be great neighbors. I mean, I know it was upset, but I think that in the long run, that's probably going to be better for that community, you know, in the way that it's upkeep than it would have been if it was Chicago Autism. Personally, but that's just me.
So can I just make a comment?
Yes.
I know you can't do anything about this. So everybody here, when I got my tax bill, my husband was out of town, and I went, oh my God, he's gonna save the cost of Brazil right now.
Yeah.
Wait. So next day I went back and I looked at it. So this, now, you have to look at your bill every year.
Yeah.
And I noticed we didn't have the general homestead on there or the senior. So I did appeal it, it was great, helping us out. And we did get money.
Well, you don't have an exemption
But I'm gonna
for the
tell you,
CV.
what had me in there, and I had to go back because when we got home, we both went in, I had to sign papers and everything. Over here in conversation, we had fallen off since, I think it was 2019. And there was a lot of people who fell off,
Oh.
and they didn't know it. And Will County was blaming Frankfort Township, and Frankfort Township is blaming Will County, and you can't get that money back. You can only appeal last year's. So there's a lot of money we were entitled to. So
Yeah.
pay attention to your
So-
bill every year.
Will County was under COVID for almost a year after.
Not an excuse.
I know it's not. Oh, no. Listen, if you think I'm making an excuse for Will County, I am not making an excuse for Will County. I guarantee you that I did not remove your senior exemption. I can guarantee you that my office, the only way I'm ever removing an exemption is if somebody asks me to. That what Amanda would do or one of us would do.
That's what
Nobody
they said.
would do.
They would only take it off if you asked them to.
Oh, one of my trustees had their exemption pulled. Well, absolutely. In fact,
Here's another one.
another one.
Add to the list.
That's
Here's
what I was.
another one. This is had been going on since, I think it was 2019.
Yeah, well, so
There
there's.
was a lot of money they got.
Well, it's not, there's no money involved. It means that other people weren't paying for that exemption there. It doesn't, exemptions don't make, the government make lesser money. The only time exemptions actually affect the government is in this situation where, like, let's say you came in and we filed a certificate of error and we went back a year for you, right? We went back to the bill you had in front of you to give you the money back. Well, that money comes out of the general fund of the county, and Will County did some bad choices. They weren't forcing seniors to refile the freeze for 2 years during COVID, which meant that seniors tend to not think about it again, and they weren't filing it, so they weren't getting anything in the mail. And then all of a sudden they get their tax bill and they're, oh my God, it just went up $3,000. And now they come back into my office, I have to file a C of E, certificate of error, And now the county has to pony out of their general fund $3,000. And that actually caused a major problem because so many seniors, we were getting
They had 5,000.
5,000 CFDs in regards to this, which actually caused them to change. And, you know, it used to be, when I filed a certificate of error, there was never a question. Now, let's say you had a fire, okay?
So, but the thing is, it's like, I think the senior was my fault because I didn't know it was on there. So I never applied for it. I'm
Okay.
69 years old. That's 4
Right.
years is my fault. Okay? But the general homestead just fell off for no reason. I've been in my house since 2001.
Right. Once again, not something that I could physically do unless I actually went in to remove just yours. One of my township
But there was a lot of
trustees,
people.
Dave Smith, yeah, absolutely. One of my township trustees is like, hey, what happened to my senior exemption? And I'm like, yeah, they
They transferred to a new system.
they transferred to a new system, and I'm not making excuses for anybody but myself. I will tell you that I will work, tirelessly to make sure that
Point
happens.
is, pay
But-
attention to the
Well, but just like, so like they changed the rules. So like it used to be, let's say you had a fire in your house, right? And you couldn't live there anymore, the house is burned down. The county actually requires me to keep a value on it for the burned out shell. Whereas in the past, I used to just, listen, you a fire, you really can't use the services you're paying for. I'm going to put you at 0 until I get a certificate of occupancy. The county now refuses those certificates of error and tell me that I have to keep value on it. So you've had possibly the worst instance of whatever's happened to you. You burned out of your house. And I'm telling you that I'm going to charge you for the burned out shell that's sitting there. It's absolutely, I'm like, we had meetings over it, we've had fights about it. I'm just like, I won't, I'm not justifying anything that the county does. You can put that on tape, sorry. All right, yes. Any other questions? You want to yell at me? That's fine. I'm here to help. And if you want to file an appeal, give it a shot. Take a look. First off, go to Zillow, go to Redfin, take a look at what houses are selling for. Then, you can go to my website. You can go to frankfortassessor.com. You want to know what houses are? Go to property search. Click down, say, I understand the above statement. Scroll down, put in Kevin. I live on Kevin Avenue. Just the least amount of data you put in here, the better. So Kevin, hit search. Now, every single house on Kevin will show up with its address. And every single one that you can look and say, fine, click on,
I'm just clicking out.
okay, that's close
You can
enough.
scroll down.
And there'll be a picture, there'll be a sketch.
This is your property record card, so if you're gonna turn it in, the county will allow you to do the property record cards on our website.
Yes, you can use our property records. The first thing that I want you to look at is that sketch. Make sure that sketch is correct, because that is what's dictating the square footage in your house. And if you scroll back down a little bit, down, up, you can show right here is gross living area, right there. That's the amount of gross living area. That's what you're going to divide the improvement by that number to get a price per square foot. Yes?
If you wanna find
Is the
sales.
unfinished basement part of that, or is
No.
that's-
Anything below grade is not considered gross living area. That's why I generally lump houses that have walkouts the same with walkouts. And if but generally by law, anything below grade is not considered gross living area. That's why when you get to a price per square foot of some of these split levels, they're a lot higher because there's a lot of finished area below and they sell for more. I mean, the philosophy is that a price per square foot of a ranch house is more than a two-story. Why is that? Well, a ranch house, when you build a house, the most expensive part to build is the foundation. The second most expensive part of a house to build is a roof. In a ranch, underneath every square foot is a basement and a roof. In a two-story, you pop it up, joist in the middle. You're cutting down the cost. Second, it's resale value. How many in here would move into a two-story, or would move into a two-story house because they don't want to climb 8 stairs? Me? Yes. There are people, so you are people that are not buying it. I mean, it used to be, you would look at ranches with pools and those would sell for less because people in ranches didn't generally have pools, but since COVID, any pools just price values up, so. Question, yes?
So, before you were talking about when you do assessments, and I'm gonna use what you phrased at one time, a 3-year thing.
3-year average, yes. Well, that's what the assessment is based on.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit
Sure.
more, how that works?
The Department of Revenue looks at sales and they compare what I have it assessed by to what the relationship of what the actual sale took place. They give me the sales, I look to see if it's a legitimate sale, it's not Tim selling to his brother or any of these things. And then that is averaged over 3 years. And the purpose of averaging it is that it doesn't cause wild swings. So it would be the average value over the 3 preceding years. But that shouldn't matter. As values go up, that should mean that the prices around you still should be selling for more. And that's how they get the factor. So when we're going up 10% or 12%, that's just purely based upon the numbers of where I have things assessed and what they sell for. And that's where the numbers have just shot through the roof. There's not even now, there's not a day that goes by that I don't see sales come across and I'm just like, wow. When I get, $625,000 and I'm in a community that has never seen a house sell for over 5.5. And it's 6.25 for a 2-story that has nothing of any major consequence. I don't know how the bank is issuing loans on this. How does it appraise out? I mean, I would love to know. I would love to see the appraisal where the appraiser says, oh yeah, you can loan this guy $625,000 on this house. Because, quite frankly, nothing's ever sold for more than $550,000. And that house had a pool that was inside. Never ever buy a house with a pool indoors. I'm telling you that right now. It's a bad idea. Every house that's had a pool indoors around here has always run into problems. So, it's just, yes?
Some people sometimes do themselves more harm than good by
No. No, I don't ever punish anybody for that. I mean, if you walked in and your tax bill was $2,000 and said, I'm filing an appeal, yeah, that might charm. But if you're sitting there and you're obviously upset about taxes, I'm not going to say, oh, wait a minute, the average price per square foot is $32 and you're $31. I'm not bringing you to 32.
And nothing like, oh, we didn't know you had that bigger patio or that pergola or that
No.
basement patio.
No. I mean, don't be wrong, if something comes out and I find out that you put an in-ground pool in and I don't have the in-ground pool, and you would go look at the sketch before you started to argue, and then I found out you had an indoor pool, I might have to add that. But even if I do, there's a 4-year exemption on somebody that if you want to do an improvement to your house, it doesn't affect your taxes for 4 years. Huh? No. You're in Tinley Park. He didn't raise his levy a dime, 0%. And in fact, next year, they're going to start paying the correct amount. This place here right now, we're in County right now, right? Yes. And that, I will be so happy that that's going to happen. Because what happens up there, I can't explain, and I know you're with Connie, I'm so sorry. I like rational, common sense kind of things. Do you have a question? Yes? No?
No, I do. So, how relevant would, like, say you did a refi like 2 or 3 years ago, you had an appraisal. Like, how relevant?
I'll look at it. I mean, you can actually use that as it all depends. Refi appraisals are for banks. The bank is the main customer. The reality is that since 2007, refi appraisals are stepped down. Nobody's ever going to do any legal action against an appraiser that puts a value in lower than it is. And the bank, you know, the banks got left holding a lot of bad real estate in 2007 that were appraised for a lot higher than they were. And then all of a sudden, the market falls out, and they've given out, you know, $400,000 on this house that they can't get rid of for $2. That's a $200,000 bank. Yes, but I mean, actually, it's a little worse because I think what they're going to do is that the Fed is going to relax interest rates or lower them in a time when the market is as high as it is and the housing market is as high as it is, which it causes hyperinflation, which, you know, that's what, you know, and that scares me. I sit back and that's what keeps me up at night when I look at what the Fed's going to do with interest rate. I mean, and believe me, there's most of us that have been in here probably sit here with interest rates at 2. That's an aberration. It never should have happened, and we all benefit from it now. We're not going to sell our houses, and it makes it worth. But if it starts dropping down, and you know, when Arbery Hills 3 years ago, you were $220,000. I'm looking now, and they're all in the $350,000 and $400,000 for Arbery Hills, which is unincorporated. They have bad water. They got American water. That's the, you know, yes, that's very expensive. Yes. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
I don't know if anybody, I'm ignorant to this, like, probably lived in the house for 6 years, never done an appeal. Is there any way you could like quick walk through, like, so you go on the website, download forms?
So what you're going to do is you're going to want to compare. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Redfin or Zillow,
Okay.
and you're going to look to your neighborhood and see what houses that are similar to yours are selling for.
But you want to see the square footage from our website.
Yeah,
because
not from
Redfin and
Zillow.
Zillow are going to be wrong.
So like, go to Zillow, get your comparables, then go to your
Well,
website.
look for sales. Look for
Right,
sales.
right.
Okay, then go to our website,
Okay.
do the property search, put your street name in, your next street over, or take a drive around and say, yeah, that's my style of house, or that's my style of house. I'm going to take that address in. Yeah, I'm going to take that address back here.
And then if you scroll down,
Yeah.
if there's recent sales in the neighborhood that are the same thing, like 2 stories,
Right.
Yeah.
it's going to pop up, and you're going to see in the last 3 years what's sold.
You can see what the sales are on my website. I will list those sales. But I'm going to tell you to go to Redfin, Zillow as an alternate way to pull more in.
So once you have those, like, then you can calculate the price per square foot.
Price per square foot to see how you're being assessed in relation to them.
Okay, and that's pretty much it then.
That's for assessment equity. If your sales or recent sales, I doubt any of us here, in fact, we just had a couple people come in, actually had one come in that actually hit them higher than their sale value, which I don't know, I'll have to look into the sale. But that was the first one that I've had in, I don't know, 3 years. So, I mean, it's an idea. And like I said, if you want help, or you need help, we're definitely there for that. If you decide that you don't want to do this, it's too much of a pain in the butt, call me in February. I've already got people lined up for February to sit and have the conversation. And it's laid back. I'm not a mean person. We will sit down, I will pull up all of the data, we will pull it up on screens, I have maps and whatever. We talk about what value is, we talk about property taxes. And once again, plead with you to pay attention when you vote. Look at what it is. If you want, I write a pretty directed email chain about property taxes. If you want to sign up, I'll take your email and add you to the list. And it's just about what what things happen at the state level as far as property taxes. Like that $750,000, the original veterans exemption was, if your house ever went over $750,000, you started getting a tax bill, which I didn't find actually all that bad of an idea, because I mean, I think that just got changed and got nerfed so that anything over $750,000, that's when the tax bill starts. Because I've had many veterans that came in that, I just bought this house for $720,000  4 years ago, and now you're valuing it over $750,000. You got to value it lower for that. I'm like, it's what the numbers are. I mean, people buy houses for 800,000 expecting me to drop it. No. The law is the law. And I mean, we're all in this together. And believe me, it's in my benefit and it's all of your benefit that this burden is shared equally, so that when we all raise our hand at the end of the day that tax bills are too high, we pay attention about what generates said tax bill. And we reward people that do good jobs in regards to it, and maybe change the game for people that don't. Yes, sir.
If there's a discrepancy on the square footage on a property card,
Yeah.
is that better to deal with this now or in the software?
It's better to get it to me as soon as possible. I might not be able to do anything until the next year's assessment level, but I will take care of it. That's the number one thing that, a lot of the measurements that have been done were done in the past by people well before I was in office, and sometimes they miss things like areas open to above. I mean, if you have a big great room and they didn't draw a big great room, open up one of these sketches. Yeah, that's perfect. So like this area here, the garage, like. So let's say that there was an area that wasn't upper, so that that isn't second story, and whoever drew it sketched it in and has a second story there. That could be 300 square feet, which would throw off your price per square foot, and which would make things inequitable, which is something that we try to strive against. Does that make sense? Any other questions? No? Was it helpful?
Thank you very much.
I mean, the reality is that we as individuals are dictating what this tax bill is. Every single one of the taxing bodies is voted on by you, except Will County Mental Health, which is the new one that we voted for, that I literally knocked on. Said, listen, you know what, it's just, because my motto, and they've said this, no amount of money that the government is going to collect for mental health is going to dissuade the mental health problems and your tax bill increases are going to cause all of this. So, all right, thank you. All right, yes. All right,
Thank you, Joe. Before everyone gets up and leave, I want to turn the microphone over to Dinah from our police department that would like to say a couple words.
Hi, my name is Dinah Nevis from the Tinley Park Police Department. Tinley Park now has a camera registry program. If you have cameras and want to be a part of this, please register your camera. What would happen is, in particularly if you're a business, if you're a school, that's only going to be for your benefit to register. If something happened on your street, currently our officers go door to door to find out who has cameras. And then they'll ask to see footage. It is private, no one is going to see inside your house. I did give out these forms when we did the Cook County program here. And I had all kinds of questions, but it's a great program. I have a flyer that I'll give everyone. You can use the QR code to get some more information. It's totally voluntary. It's not Big Brother. People said, hey, but I don't want the police to know what I'm doing. And nobody's going to see in your house. And it would only be in case there's a problem. You can also do rape. So it's just something, take it home, read about it. It's just, we have cameras throughout the village. We want everybody to be safe and have a really great community. Tinley Park is a great community to live in. And so we want to continue it to be great. So thank you very much.
Hey, great job. That's awesome.
Thank you, Dinah. Hey, Dinah, you got a hand waving for one. So again, we'll end this tonight, but again, thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Joe, from Frankfort Township Assessor. for doing this for all of us. Hopefully you learned something. If not, set up a meeting with Joe for February for a soft appeal. Want to thank our marketing department for filming this. Want to thank our clerk Nancy O'Connor again for showing up for support. And Lisa Valley, who does all the work behind the scenes for us to do these. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Not raising your levy, absolutely the most awesome thing that I've actually seen. Thank you. Not raising your levy, here, thank you, Mayor, absolutely. Awesome. Awesome.